Some interesting news has come to light in the last couple days, and I just had to share it with you guys. I think you're going to like this one. It's going to be pretty entertaining. While over 60 million eligible Americans are still waiting in the dark, whether they'll receive their stimulus payment or have not received it, there's an unsuspecting group that you would never guess is having no problem receiving their stimulus payment: the dead. Thousands of deceased people are receiving stimulus checks, and according to MarketWatch, more and more reports are coming in of spouses and children of deceased people who are receiving the $1,200 payment for the deceased relative. So I'm going to go into why this is happening and what happens in the case of the people who are receiving these payments for deceased relatives. Before I get into it, please consider liking this video. If you like my content, it helps me out, it helps out the YouTube algorithm, and I would appreciate it so very much. And also consider subscribing. Only 4% of the people who watch my videos are subscribed. I know it takes a lot to subscribe to a new channel. You know, there's some commitment there, there's some trust building there. You know, if you feel I deserve it, just consider subscribing. There's my pitch. So let's get into why is this happening. The IRS determines eligibility based off of your 2019 tax return. And if there is no 2019 tax return filed, they base it off your 2018 taxes. And the IRS has no system in place for stimulus checks to ensure that the recipient is actually alive, believe it or not. According to Leonard Berman, the co-founder of Urban Brookings Tax Policy Center, the IRS largely relies on the SSA for up-to-date death records. But that information could take anywhere from a few months to a year or more to trickle in after someone's death. It's kind of crazy. Some of these government systems are just not up to date. They're not what you're used to on the consumer side. Many of them are just delayed and antiquated and filled with layers of bureaucracy. It's not super surprising, but it's also pretty entertaining. It really comes down to the fact that the goal of the stimulus package is to get payments out as quickly as possible, which by default decreases accuracy. The IRS is just simply not taking the time to check incomplete death records, and they're aware the side effect of this is many additional payments will be sent out to people who are, undeserving of receiving payments. And this can't be too expected taking a look at the other issues with the stimulus check program. We're looking at major glitches and issues that are either delaying or keeping people from receiving their payments, a portal that has error messages that who knows what they mean, people who aren't receiving payments for dependents or the wrong amounts. I mean, we can see why speed is causing so many of these issues. So that brings us back. If a deceased person fits the stimulus check criteria of gross income below $75,000 for single filers or under $150,000 for couples, they have a social security number, and they aren't a dependent on someone else's taxes, they're due to receive that $1,200 to $2,400 stimulus check, respectively, as long as their death certificate hasn't either reached the IRS or there's some issue with it. Who knows? I mean, there's examples of people who have loved ones who have died in 2018 and are receiving this stimulus check payment. On the USA Today, Representative Thomas Massey of Kentucky shared an image of a text from a friend that read, "Dad got his stimulus check of $1,200. He died in 2018. Does he have to spend it online?" 2018. So as you can see, there can be many errors with these systems, and it just leaves us with entertainment, I guess. It's not clear how many dead people have actually received these stimulus check payments. I'd be willing to guess that it's a fairly large number, but believe it or not, this is not the first time that this has happened. The federal government issued stimulus checks back in 2008 and 2009, and more than 71,000 dead Social Security recipients received a $250 stimulus under the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, totaling just under $18 million of the $13 billion stimulus package. $18 million to deceased people on Social Security received that in 2009. And this stimulus, that was a $13 billion stimulus. This stimulus is more than 10 times the size. So we can only imagine, I mean, even if it was the same number, percentage-wise of people, we're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars being sent to potentially deceased people. This is especially common with spouses in a situation where the bank account used to accept a tax refund in the past is still open, which makes perfect sense. If there's a joint account, they haven't yet received the death certificate, or there's some error there. Maybe someone who has a deceased spouse hasn't filed the taxes yet that show that they are now a single filer. These are all reasons that would make it very easy for that additional stimulus payment to be deposited into their used-to-be joint account. So what happens to a person who receives a payment from a deceased person? Now this is where it gets really interesting. It's looking like the deceased or their dependents will be able to keep these overpayments, believe it or not, due to a lack of stipulations in the CARES Act stating that if overpayments were made, there needs to be refunds taken back from the account. This leads us to the next question. What are the deceased allowed to spend this $1,200 on? Well, that's the eternal question. Here's another unanswered question. According to Holtzblatt's on CNBC, if the IRS accidentally tries to send a stimulus payment to a deceased individual and the money bounces back because the bank account on file is closed or the mailing address is invalid, will the IRS keep that money, or is a surviving member entitled to the funds? This is an interesting proposition because they're really no less entitled than the people who are receiving the funds in a non-closed account. However, neither of those groups are necessarily entitled. So if an account was accidentally sent that payment, it got bounced back, are those people going to be able to go to the IRS and say, hey, this bounced, send it our way? That I would be kind of surprised. However, there's no rule against it as far as I can find on the CARES Act. Might be worth a shot. If you're in that situation, you might be entitled to an extra $1,200 payment. And if you have a deceased family member, it might be worth looking up in the Track My Stimulus Check payment, their social security number and information to see if a payment was indeed sent either to them or to a dead bank account. Because, I mean, who knows at this point? This is, again, the issue with the speed of this system. Their goal was to get these payments out as quickly as possible to people, and they're aware that there's just going to be rampant fraud and tons of issues. There's going to be overpayments, underpayments. As we can see, this is chaos. This is why I have enough to talk about and post videos every single day on this topic, because there's so many issues, there's so much going on, there's so much confusion. So he goes on to say, there's one clue from the CARES Act that may hint at their being able to keep the payments. Americans who received larger stimulus payments than they should have can actually keep their funds according to the law. So this is different than what we previously thought. Previously, we thought, if, let's say, you made enough money in 2018 to qualify for the stimulus, but in 2019 you made too much and disqualified yourself. However, you have not filed your 2019 taxes. It was previously thought that if you received the stimulus, you may have to pay a portion of that back. However, that might not actually be the case according to some nuances in the CARES Act law. It's really interesting because, let's say, for example, someone earned $50,000 in 2018 and $120,000 in 2019, but has not yet filed taxes for 2019. That person isn't technically qualified to receive the stimulus payment. However, there is not yet a record of them being disqualified. So according to this nuance, to this rule, it seems like this group of people may actually be entitled to keep their stimulus payment. In summary, it's leaning towards that the IRS may have to let people get what they get, even if it means they don't qualify, due to the sake of the speed of the system. So if you're a high income earner or a dead person watching this video, the odds are looking like they're in your favor in order to keep this additional tax-free stimulus payment. The only question next is what you're going to spend it on. I'd like to thank you for watching. If there's a specific topic that you'd like me to cover, it doesn't have to be about the stimulus, preferably not about the stimulus, because I'm doing so many videos on this, I'm getting some stimulus burnout. Let me know in the comments below. I'd be interested to see what you guys are interested in. And I'll also be interested to see what you guys think about these payments being sent to deceased people. I think it's pretty entertaining and kind of cool, to be honest, that people can actually keep the payments, it's looking like. So until next time, I'd like to thank you for watching, and I hope you have a profitable day.